is my very first time in Denmark, and it's amazing. So I've tried to incorporate a few of my very favourite Danish things into this talk, because it's all very novel to me. So I'm Jayne. I am a teaching fellow at Newcastle University in the UK, and one of the things that I work on quite a lot is skin. Technically, I'm an electrochemist, so I'm not quite sure how I made it over to skin, but what I do is I design biosensors, different diagnostic devices, to try and figure out what goes wrong in different disease states. And one of the things I got quite involved with was looking at how tattoos could be used diagnostically, meaning how we could figure out how to use them to diagnose disease, how to use them to timeline death, how to use them in solving crimes. And it was super interesting. I love skin pigmentation, I love the tanning process, I love the sun, so this was great for me. Do we have many tattoos in the room tonight? Yeah, one over there? One of you got one. Oh, a few over here as well. I'm looking for the nerdiest tattoo in the room. What's this?
It's a particle accelerator.
Oh.
It's also in Scicomm.
I have the Stargate home sequence and point of origin going down my spine on my back, which I think is pretty nerdy as well, but yours is actual real science. I think you win. Okay, so this gentleman over here clearly wins. Not so nerdy, you do not get a prize. I was hoping I would win. Nonetheless, so few people got tattoos. Do you know how they get there? Apart from the pain and the needles. You were drunk? You were drunk? Anybody sober getting tattoos?
Lots of stabbing.
Lots of stabbing. Excellent. Okay. Cool.
No question.
You would be surprised.
Where do you get tattoos?
I've never had one. It's rose tinted glass.
Threesome.
No more Scots in there. Okay. So you'd be surprised at how tricky it actually is to make a good tattoo that's going to last a lifetime and look good for a lifetime as well. If you're like me and you love the sun, you're just going to ruin your tattoos unless you're going to cover them up and put a lot of sunscreen on them. Because UV light, when it hits the pigment in your tattoo, all that ink, it likes to break it up and try and degrade it, break it down, loses its colour. Mine have faded quite a lot. I also have quite dry skin, so mine have lost their colour over time. But the way that you make a tattoo is you need to get the ink in a very, very special place in your skin. Get it in a special place, which is called the epidermal dermal junction. Now, I like to think of the epidermis as being a bit like a layer cake. It's actually not like a layer cake at all, it's more like, come on Danes, help me out. Close, maybe. It's actually more like this, but for illustration purposes, we're going to use cake tonight. Mainly because it's delicious. So the reason it's more like this than that is because in your dermis you've got a big matrix full of not much really apart from substance. Collagen, fibrin, things like that. Stuff that makes scaffolding for your skin to sit on. If you wreck your dermis, you will get wrinkles, my friend. So protect your skin. And in amongst that beautiful matrix you've got the odd little cell called fibroblast who makes all the scaffolding. He is your builder, if you will. Just a little cheeky nose to one there. So yeah, we've got our dermis. It's very important. It is our scaffolding. It is strong, still flexible, but we'll just, you know, have it if you try to do too much good stuff. You know, I've got spares. It's okay. Hopefully this place has a vacuum cleaner also. Right. What goes on top of the dermis? Anybody know? It's a very good bit. It's the epidermis. Epidermis, Latin, top of dermis. It's very good. Now the epidermis, when it dries out, it grows crinkly, it grows brittle. That's called your stratum corneus, your horny layer on the outside of your skin. Now when it's dry, it flakes off. That's what your dry, dead skin is. But when it's hydrated, it is super flexible, super see-through, super gorgeous. And it starts at the very bottom, on top of the dermis, being a super flexible, super see-through, super beautiful thing. Just like that. And what happens is you've got these skin stem cells at the bottom, the keratinocytes. Beautiful little cells, live forever. They actually live for about 3 days. So between the bottom layer of skin and the top layer of skin, it takes about 6 weeks, but these little stem cells are turning over pretty much every 3 days. If you go by your gut, you're only 3 days old as well, because those cells turn over super quickly too. So we've got about 3 or 4 layers of dirty epidermal cells on top of the dermis. Now the main reason these guys are here is because they are protecting your dermis and keeping your insides in and your outsides out. It's pretty important. It's also really important for keeping things like pollutants and birds and you know, the sun and people like that. Now I'm a person who is very fair-skinned, but I tan pretty easily. I've noticed the Danes are not so good at tanning. Not so good at tanning, friend. A little bit sunburn on the nose there, yeah.
I turn red.
Little bit sunburn. And that's because this guy doesn't have melanocytes that make beautiful melanin. I, however, have melanocytes that selectively make melanin. If you're one of the wonderfully bronzed people, you've got skin cells, melanocytes that make pigment all year round. Now when the sun shines on them and stresses those cells out, they make more pigment. Pigment goes into the keratinocytes. As the keratinocytes grow and multiply and move up through the layers of the skin, they take that pigment with them. That's what makes your tan. So I'm supposed to put some cocoa in between these layers, we're good. So what I've got right there is a punch biopsy. It's a little bit of dermis with a bit of epidermis on top. We are ready to make our tattoo. I'm going to need 3 volunteers. Come forth. Would you like to introduce yourself to these fine people?
Hello, fine people. I don't have any tattoos, but I'm very keen to make one.
Are you okay being filmed?
I am okay being
Any more? Okay being filmed. Anybody else? I need 3 friends. 3 friends. Somebody over here?
It's not really a tattoo on your skin, don't worry.
Don't worry. Is that right? I'm going to make a tattoo on your skin. We're all friends here. Right, you can go here. Anybody? Yeah! Would you like to introduce yourself to these people?
Hi, people, I'm Caroline.
Caroline, thank you very much. Can I have one more volunteer? Anybody this side of the room can come. Come on.
Milko, come on.
Come on. Oh, Wilco's coming.
You do it.
No, you do it. Oh, right. So my three apprentices, my 3 tattoo apprentices. How are you feeling today?
Sounds great.
Ready to make some a lifetime's worth of art. Oh, just de-epidermis, you're one of the dermises. Rubbish. Right, okay. I've made you a beautiful skin sample each. There you go. That's going to make your job a lot easier, actually. Right.
I'll take over this.
Too much being in the sun.
As a tattoo artist, it's your responsibility to make a tattoo quickly, with the least amount of damage, with the right amount of penetration. So what you're aiming for, is to get your tattoo ink, another one of my favourite things from Denmark, blue Curaçao cordial. I mean, come on, it's amazing. Makes everything taste like holidays. It does, it's amazing. So, you've got to get your ink, please don't spill it on the nice man's table, into that space, quickly, without damaging the epidermis too much, not going too far through the dermis, okay?
That's a lot of requirements.
You can do it, I believe in you. This is your tattoo needle. Your tattoo needle is what's called a battery. It has 3 needles stuck together. And the reason that works is a bit like a fountain pen. The ink goes in the end and gets held in a reservoir, so it can be pushed into the skin. Your tattoo needle, friend?
Well, thank you.
And yourself?
Thank you. Which layer am I supposed to be getting this?
You're trying to get it between the dermis and the epidermis.
This layer, okay.
Yep, so you dip into the ink to pick up your ink right the way in, friends. And then you stab it in the skin. And you're going to make an initial. You're going to make your first tattoo, which is your initial. You're going to have to work fastly, quickly. You've got 30 seconds to do the first letter of your first name.
Oh.
Go, friends, go!
Time!
Go!
Timer!
Timer! Ish!
Somebody count.
I'm on it. Oh, we've got some very neat lines going on here. This guy, look at the speed, Ooh. Excellent. Come on, you can do this, guys.
I don't know if I'm getting the right amount of penetration though.
I feel like my
If you have to ask.
I'm
That's
going to
not
give you
enough, right?
10 more seconds, friends.
It was quick. Well done.
So quick.
Can
this guy. M's going for it, right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Stop! You've earned your tattoo money for the day. Meta you are.
All sorts of problems going on there.
Okay, right. Tattoo overshot the mark. Labels down. We're going to review this. I'd just like to point out there was a prize for the best tattoo.
Oh, now you should have told us that before. I would have tried a lot harder.
I think you did a good job. Okay, so we have Meta up first. She's done a very good job of putting some good ink on top of the epidermis. If we remove it, we see that we don't have full penetration. Woo! So what's going to happen to this tattoo? Is this a good tattoo or a bad tattoo? Bad tattoo. What's going to happen to it?
It's going to fade.
It's going to fade. It's going to gradually grow off. It's going to last about 6 weeks. The time it takes for those skin cells to go from the bottom layer to the top. 6-week tattoo right there.
Semi-drama.
For the commitment phase among us.
Caroline has made a very good job of putting lots of ink down, so hopefully I'm getting a good job. Oh no.
Oh no, nothing.
No penetration here at all.
No.
This tattoo would wipe off in the collar.
I am not off the
For sure it's on.
Or I should have spent more than 10 seconds on this.
What's your name, sorry?
Mickey.
Mickey! Now the nice thing about this...
My penetration does not look that
No,
bad.
actually it doesn't look that bad.
Yeah.
Awesome. So that means... with the 6-week tattoo is Anna. Your prize method is a Lego create the set of a toddler having a wee against a fire hydrant. There you go. And you take your seats back now, friend. Thank you. You did very well. Right, okay. You might be thinking, SJ, what the fuck has this got to do with forensics or anything? Well, the goal that we're trying to demonstrate here is that the ink goes through the epidermis and it sits in that space between the 2 skin layers. Ideally what it does is it just penetrates that dermal layer and it gets stuck there for 2 reasons. 1, you're staying in the scaffold that those fibroblasts live in, and 2, you've got an innate immune system in your skin. Lots of little guys called macrophages that come and try and gobble up the ink because it's foreign. They get fat and they get stuck. They're like Homer Simpson in the slide in the water park. Now then, have you ever burned your tattoo? No. This is what happens. So this is a guy who burned back his hand barbecuing. Can you see how vibrant the tattoo is underneath that epidermis? Beautiful. If you've never seen, be careful what you Google. But what I would suggest having a curious look at is skin slippage corpse. And essentially what happens is, you've got your melanocytes at the bottom layer, bottom of your epidermal layer with all the pigment in. They tan, they have colour, they make your epidermis opaque. When you slough it off, you've got this beautiful, perfect canvas underneath your epidermis that holds pigment really, really beautifully. So it doesn't matter what your skin colour is, as soon as we get rid of that epidermal layer, there's a beautiful canvas just waiting there to take on all the ink, which is really handy when we're trying to diagnose different diseases. We can use solvent or substrate reactive inks in skin to try and investigate things like diabetes. Really cool project, tattooing the whites of the eyeball as a good way of monitoring interstitial blood glucose level in diabetes, but also we can use it in murder cases. Lots of times people would try and burn a corpse or put acid on it or something like that, and all it does is actually destroy the epidermis. It leaves the dermis pretty much intact. Next picture isn't as gross as you think it's going to be. But essentially, what we're looking at here is the leg of a deceased Hispanic man. You can see that the epidermis is quite deeply coloured, and in fact where the tattoo is sitting you can't see it. However, as the skin is slipped, as the body starts to decay, it reveals this tattoo underneath. So sometimes the evidence is overlooked in the first instance until that body starts to decay. Does anyone know what a body farm is? Yeah. Everyone's like, I love the gross stuff. So in body farms, you might take bodies of different ethnicities, different colours, different states of decay, and look to see how those tattoos are preserved in the corpse state. This has been such a pivotal revelation, the fact that we can decode what's going on with the body by taking away that epidermal layer. It's really useful, especially in the US, there's a lot of gang violence. People can be identified by their tattoos even if the epidermis is really heavily decayed. So that's a really cool thing that's going on. So I'd like to thank you for joining in with my tattoo cake Danish odyssey, and happy to take any questions on this weird and wonderful part of science. I'll clean up.
Any questions for Sarah?
That's what they say.
Got one over there.
Hi.
Yes, I mean, it might be a bit of a science fiction, but could we imagine being able to tattoo some reactive substance into the skin that will activate under certain conditions, like for example diabetes start in your body, or you have some disease flaring up
Cancer.
or cancer cells, then you have a tattoo ding, just starting to be much more present as this disease just declare itself in your body.
So there is basic research that's been looking at things called sensitizing drugs in cases of melanoma. So one particular treatment that's used in the treatment of psoriasis is this thing called PUVA. Now you take a drug that makes you really sensitive to sunlight essentially, but the psoriasis cells are sensitized more than the regular cells around them. So when you hit them with a UV light, because they've accumulated the drug, because they've become sensitized, they selectively die compared to the cells around them.
Right.
So although that's an oral-based drug, it's usually, in fact, if anybody's used diclofenac as a painkiller, that does it really bad. If you're using diclofenac as a painkiller in the summer, please do wear extra sunscreen. But those sensitizing drugs can have that instance. Now, psoriasis can be really difficult to treat because the plaques are so odd-sized. It would be interesting to see if you could take a plaque or a melanoma or something like that and tattoo a sensitizing agent into it, which would then allow you to target it with UV light much more effectively. Different things are going on. My favourite application of tattoo is the diabetes sensor in the whites of the eyes. Unfortunately, people are a bit squeamish about getting the whites of their eyes tattooed. I mean, what's going on there? It's cool. You literally have a tiny little spectrophotometer. You look left and it measures the change in absorbance in the tattoo pigment. It's absolutely amazing. No needles, no prick testing, lasts a lifetime.
So we could imagine having like a car dashboard on our skin somewhere as tattoos, like ding, one light just for us.
Oh no! Dehydrated! Absolutely, why not? So, you know, RFIDs are becoming smaller and smaller all the time, to the point that you could probably magnetize a nanoparticle and use it in that way. There's so many applications for tattoos in terms of diagnostics or labeling. It's really quite scary. Trocar is like another technique, putting a small implant under the skin. Yeah, so I reckon, yeah, you could do it. Why not? Let's find out.
Volunteers? Next experiment?
Next experiment.
3 people back.
3 people back, yeah. The same ones.
Chance of redemption.
Yeah. Any more questions?
Anyone? Oh, go on.
Got one here?
The level of penetration, is that basically the difference? Because, yeah, just got to keep going on.
Just got to
keep going on this on this thread. You can get you can get eyebrows tattooed, right? And that doesn't last as long as normal tattoos. Is that because of the level of the
level of penetration and the area that the skin that's being tattooed? So, for example, lots of people like to get tattoos in places that are covered up. One particular favourite place is the top of so this bit on your foot, yeah, like the your foot. The skin here is super thin, your epidermis is really, really thin. You don't have much of a stratum corneum, so the epidermis sloughs off and gets replaced really, really quickly. It's also braided quite a lot, so your shoes rubbing against it all the time. So a tattoo there doesn't last very long. The palm of your foot, where the skin is super thick, but it turns over really quickly, tattoos don't last there very long either. And it's really hard as a tattoo artist to kind of gauge the depth at which to put the tattoo. So what works for one part of the body doesn't work for another, which is why you should always go to an experienced professional tattoo artist to get your tattoos done and not some street scratcher. They know what they're doing. So yeah, facial makeup, permanent makeup, doesn't go very deep. It's often put in with a blade as opposed to a needle. So microblading for the eyebrows, it's a tiny razor that's cut, and then the pigment's rubbed in, as opposed to a needle. And then the ink.
Is that what you've been?
Yeah, sorry, just Works really well, and it doesn't hurt as much. Usually they use a drug called Amato, which is just a benzocaine-based numbing cream that goes on the top. Put it on, bit of cling film over the top, 40 minutes, completely numbs everything. Get your face tattooed to your heart's content, jobs are good. Why not? Yeah, awesome. I should probably tidy this table now. Yes, there are other questions.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Sarah. That was awesome, thank you. So we have another beer break, and then we are back with Meta, and she will tell us what's in the box.
What's in the box?
Yes.